Hey, I'm Danielle, and I'm about to give you a peek inside the journal I used as I changed around my whole work life. At the end of last year, I made a goal, and that was to transform my professional life, and that's exactly what I did. Flashing back to the end of last year, I was working alongside the founder of a startup, which I loved, and at that point, it was kind of feast or famine. It was a little bit up and down, which actually just started my mind thinking about what else I might want to do. I just got curious about what other kinds of things I might want to explore, and I didn't totally know all the answers, but I knew that I needed to start. So I started reading a book called Designing Your Life, and I bought this little black notebook from Amazon, and the journey began. And what's really great about looking back at this thing is that it tracks the whole process. You see the journaling prompts and exercises and notes and strategies, the research notes, the informational interview call notes, the timelines and plans. It's quite a sight to see. I went from working at the startup to then taking on different gigs up to having 5 jobs, and then I just got a new full-time job and have a couple little gigs on the side that I'll keep working on. So I want to kind of show you how that all came about. So without further ado, here's a look into my notebook and into my process. Here is my little journal, and really the first thing I want to say is to have a journal, to have a career journal that is keeping all your thoughts and ideas and notes in one place and can kind of capture your path. It's been really cool to look back at everything and just kind of like see how everything came about and see some kind of clues in the beginning. And you're gonna actually think differently when you're writing it all out, putting pen to paper, than if you're typing it out. So honestly, first piece of advice is to have a journal. So how do you use a journal like this, a career journal? Well, let's dive in. The first piece is you want to really use this journal to capture your ideas. So I've got a huge ideas list here, and by writing them all out, it really helps me to clarify my thinking. I tend to think in circles, and so when I just get it all out of my head, it helps me really make sense of things. And really, you want to come up with a bunch of ideas. You want to come up with ideas in bulk because eventually some of them are going to be good, right? You don't want to force yourself to filter too soon to come up with good ideas. You want to come up with a bunch of ideas, and eventually some of them you'll be able to use. So taking a look at some of these idea pages that I had, here's where I laid out 5 different types of lifestyles when it came to my work life, and balancing different gigs versus being fully focused, and just kind of how I wanted to spread my focus. So I just came up with a bunch of different ideas and laid it all out, and let me tell you, it was a lot better than storing it all in my head. Here were some ideas I had for different roles I might want to take on, questions that popped into my head. I wrote them all out so that I could come back to them when I was looking up stuff online or talking to people. I came up with a list of ideas of how to, get my dream career and some of the qualities that would be important, and that really helped me to narrow down to 3 different focus areas for my career endeavors, my career efforts. And getting my dream job, and I actually talk about that in another video that I can link. And I came up with some ideas of what I would want to tell people, kind of like my elevator pitch if they were asking for the types of opportunities that I was looking for. And so that just popped into my head one day, and for me to actually capture that and write it down, I had an exact conversation where I used what I wrote down here. So it was super valuable, and I feel like I communicated better because I got it all out on paper about what I was looking for rather than circling around in my head. The second thing that you want to use a journal like this for is brainstorming visually. So it's easy to just want to be a list person all the time, but actually when you draw out or map something out more visually, you think differently about it. So this right here is called a mind map, and you can just take an interest of yours and branch it all out from there. And you're just writing down whatever pops into your head, and that's gonna bring you new insights. So let's take a look at some examples of brainstorming visually. So I've got an early mind map here, which is really cool to see because I see exactly how I led to my path. So I just started somewhere, just picked something I was interested in, something I knew I liked from a previous role, and mapped out from there, and actually kind of led me to what I'll be doing in my new job, surprisingly enough. Also, you just see right here kind of me blocking out things next to each other, which even just putting things side by side made me me think about it differently and getting it out of my head rather than the circling around, which I mentioned. And here just kind of like mapping out timelines and thinking about what something could lead to and why I would focus on that makes me think differently. Here's something called an Odyssey plan, which is like a 3 to 5 year plan, but less of the traditional and more of like what's possible, little doodles, so that your brain can actually process things differently than just, you know, a list or keeping it in your mind. And like I said, you get new insights from that. The third thing you really want to use a journal like this for is collecting takeaways and writing. It's easy to say, oh yeah, I'll remember what that person said or what I came across. But the thing is, if you don't write it down, you're pretty likely to forget. And even if you don't think you will, the process of actually writing it down is going to help you remember it more clearly. So here you see an informational interview that I had with somebody and the questions I was going to ask and kind of the notes from our conversation. And looking back at this was maybe half a year ago, probably actually 8 months ago. And there's so much more here than what I would just have remembered in my head for sure. And collecting your takeaways and writing applies to informational interviews, to just research you do online, maybe a podcast you listen to, a video you watch, or even an exercise in a book or something that people say to do. A lot of times you'll take an exercise and you'll just think about it, like a journaling exercise, but to actually write it out, you get so much more from it. So here's an exercise I saw on Marie TV, which I'll link, great resource. Here's some podcast notes from something I really liked. Here's different questions that I asked myself, and I mapped out the different possible career paths with it. I have a bunch more of the informational interview notes in here. Here's some research that I did online, and I mapped it all out. Again, it's cool to see where real life actually leads in comparison to what we're researching. Additional research notes, a podcast I listened to with someone, a local innovator. It's just, it's crazy to see how we came across different ideas as well. And the sphere setting exercise by Tim Ferriss, that's also amazing. I can link that as well. So actually doing the writing, doing the thinking to, come to certain conclusions rather than just trying to think about it for a moment in your head, but actually making sure that you're getting the value from the exercise by, remembering what that exercise is and then actually going through the process of doing it. Remember, to get the most out of a career journal like this, you want to capture all your ideas, brainstorm visually, and collect your takeaways in writing. And that's a basic look into the Designing My Life / Career Discovery journal that I've used to capture my whole process over the last year. So what now? Basically, I am going to continue with a couple of the gigs I'm doing, teaching yoga classes and doing strengths interviews to see if someone's a good fit for a job and for team development stuff. Those are gigs that I started at the beginning of the year that I love, super passionate about. And then I'm starting my full-time job. What I'm gonna be doing there is I'm basically the point person at a location of a co-working space. A co-working space is essentially an office shared by entrepreneurs and startups that creates a sense of community. There's events and resources for them, and I'm gonna be the support person there. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. It's a really great community and a really beautiful team, so can't wait to get started. I have a week and a half until I get going. And that is essentially just a brief look into what I've been doing for the last year or so to figure out the next steps in my career. Thank you so much for checking this video out, for hearing a little bit into my story. If you liked it, click that little like button. If you want more tips and strategies, press subscribe and more videos will pop up soon. And I hope to see you in the next video. Bye!